39. Dirge led them on a circuitous path through the Barrow. Gryph knew the thief was doubling back on purpose in an attempt to prevent Gryph from gaining an accurate feel of the terrain. It would have been a smart tactic, but Gryph's map auto-updated. I wonder, does that only work for players? Eventually, they emerged into a large cavern. Gryph imagined that in the days when the Barrow had been a tower, it had once been some kind of reception hall. The ceiling was at least 30 feet above their heads. Luminescent moss covered the walls, casting a pleasant glow across the small village that dominated the chamber. The efficiency of the setup surprised Gryph. Several neat lines of tents filled the cavern. A small brook babbled from the wall and skirted the wall where it fed a small field of plants before disappearing into the far wall. It wasn't paradise, but one could do worse inside the Barrow. No wonder the Grey Company seemed somewhat content here. The men carrying Ovrim left the main group and brought the paralyzed Zaidai over to a well in the center of the chamber. They tied a rope around his chest and, none too gently, dumped him over the side, where they lowered him down. Gryph paid only the slightest attention, feeling Dirge's eyes on him. A small grin crossed Dirge's lips as he led them into a large tent, where rows of dilapidated chairs butted up against stone blocks used as tables. He hadn't been lying. They had their own pub, and while it wouldn't make any travel and leisure top 10 lists, it had a certain hominess to it. Dirge snapped and held up 3 fingers. A barman poured 2 draughts of some brackish amber liquid and placed the gourd cups on the stone bar. Dirge picked up one, and Gryph grabbed another. Wick sat unmoving, silent and fuming. Gryph knew that fear was eating at his friend. Gryph placed his hand on the gnome's shoulder. We'll find her, but we need a plan. Wick shrugged Gryph's hand off and stood. Make your plans, and make them quickly. I will go it alone if I must. Wick picked up his gourd of beer and threw it across the tent, where it smashed against another table, spilling the contents. Then he stomped out, came back in, and grabbed a wineskin full of the rancid stuff that the barman was pouring. What the hell, you little bastard? The barman said, but Dirge held up a hand to stop his complaints. Wick stared at Gryph with a look of anger and hate that made Gryph's veins turn to ice. Finally, the gnome turned and stomped out of the tent. Dirge laughed, and Gryph felt an intense need to punch the wiry man in the face. Instead, Gryph raised his glass to the man in salute. To new friends, Dirge said, hefting his cup high. To getting out of here, Gryph countered and clapped his gourd against Dirge's. The thief nodded and grinned. Both men drank, but only Gryph's face screwed up in distaste. The liquid may technically be beer, but it was unlike any brew Gryph had ever tasted. Peaty, earthy, and sour, the liquid burned as it went down. The aftertaste wasn't any better, reminding Gryph of rancid meat. Dirge laughed. It takes some getting used to, but it packs a punch. Dirge indicated a table and waited for Gryph to sit. So, tell me about this plan of yours, Dirge said, taking another swig. Gryph held out his hand, palm up. First, I need to know the lay of the land. Dirge stared at Gryph's hand, and then up at him. Gryph could see the man's mind working. Knowledge was power down here, but there was no logical reason for Dirge to withhold any. After all, they were allies now. Reluctantly, Dirge placed his hand on top of Gryph's, and Gryph's mental map expanded with knowledge. Gryph took a moment to examine the map. They seemed to occupy most of the 10th level of the one-time tower. According to Dirge's information, the Barrow King occupied the lowest level, 3 levels down. The 12th level was a warren of passages and dead ends filled with red trap icons and numerous enclaves of creatures Dirge had marked as the dead. The dead?
As in undead,
Dirge said, questioning Gryph's blank look.
Where the hell are you from that you haven't encountered the undead?
I'm new to the area. Can they be killed? Dirge eyed him suspiciously before speaking.
Sure, same as anything else. Hit them hard, they'll eventually go down. Lower level undead like skeletons and zombies are pretty easy. Revenants, specters, wraiths, and the more ethereal dead need silver or magic weapons. Now, the Barrow King is something different altogether. Technically, he is some kinda lich.
Dirge saw Gryph's blank expression and shrugged.
I'm going to regret this.
Just do your part, and we'll stay pals.
Anyway, a lich is the spirit of a powerful magician who has stuck around after death. Kinda foolish if you ask me. Since every sentient being in the realms has an immortal soul that reincarnates after death as something new. Why get stuck on some half-life monster when you can just come back as a newborn babe?
Power, Gryph said. Dirge nodded in assent, as if he had never thought of it before, but knew it to be true. What's on the next floor down?
Nothing really. Rats, some random monsters, but no organized force.
Seems a little odd. Dirge eyed Gryph a moment before answering.
It was part of the deal we negotiated.
Some deal. Dirge leaned forward, anger taking hold of him.
Judge me all you like, my new friend, but all of us are still alive because of the deal. It has held for the last 2 years.
Gryph realized that timeline likely matched up with Ovrim's exile from the Grey Company. Then, why agree to my plan?
Like you said, some deal,
Dirge said, and took a sip of his beer, never once taking his eyes from Gryph. Their talk turned to the casual. Dirge told him about his home, a small town on the shores of the Gypt River, a massive waterway that stabbed through the desert lands to the west and gave rise to some of the most fertile lands in the realms.
The most advanced civilization on Corin,
Dirge boasted. Sounds lovely. Why'd you leave?
Let's say a powerful noble and I didn't see eye to eye on a few things.
Gryph gave Dirge a smug look.
I may have bedded his daughter,
Dirge said, raising his gourd. Gryph nodded in understanding.
And his wives.
Gryph spit up his drink in amusement. Wives? Dirge held up 3 fingers as he took another sip from his gourd. Gryph laughed.
What can I say? I have a particular skill with alchemy, and my wares were popular with men of a certain age.
Dirge held his forearm up in an unmistakable gesture. Dirge had made magic Viagra.
This noble was a long-time customer. He even introduced me to his wives.
Dirge winked, and Gryph laughed again, a true belly laugh this time.
That wasn't the worst of it. I'm pretty sure the last straw on this camel's back was the bedding of his favorite son.
Dirge looked at Gryph, searching for judgment. But an even larger smile crossed Gryph's face. I'm starting to like you, Dirge.
Watch out for that. I'm a rogue who can't be trusted. Say, you don't happen to have a sister, do you?
Gryph choked on his beer, and while thoughts of worry turned to Bryn, he found he was enjoying himself for the first time since he'd entered the realms. Get me out of here, and maybe I'll make an introduction, Gryph said.
I think this will be the beginning of a beautiful friendship, Sir Elf.
Dirge hoisted his gourd in salute. Gryph did the same.
You bastards!
Came a voice swimming in the deep depths of inebriation. Both men turned to see Wick stumble into the tent. The empty wineskin dangled from his hand as he stumbled. Bleary red eyes stared out from underneath the gnome's acid-shorn frock of lightning blue hair. Gryph had to stifle a laugh. Wick looked like an angry, drunk toddler whose big sister had tried to pretty him up and failed. Dirge felt no need to hold his laugh, earning the immediate ire of the angry little man.
Frantic für Gryph,
Wick mumbled. Gryph's gift of tongues failed to translate the gibberish, but Dirge and Gryph still took the meaning. Wick strained to focus on the wiry man, and dark purple chthonic energy pulsed and dissipated in his eyes. Dirge's demeanor instantly shifted. Gryph jumped to his feet, nearly falling over. Damn, this horrid root beer was strong. Gryph rushed up to Wick and knelt in front of him. He forced the diminutive man to turn towards him. Wick, we will find her. We will save her. Rage and doubt and fear battled on the gnome's face. And finally, the fear won. Tears poured from his eyes as the magic faded.
Promise?
Gryph held out his pinky. For a moment, Wick just stared, before finally grasping the extended finger with his own pinky. The bond sealed, Wick stumbled back out of the tent.
I sleep,
the gnome mumbled and pushed past the flap of the tent. Gryph eased the flap open to watch as his friend weaved his way through the camp. He bumped into an old chest and then into a burly man who pushed him none too gently. Gryph felt Dirge come up next to him.
Is he going to be a problem?
No, Gryph said, never taking his eyes off of Wick. His friend walked past a small cage, and a tiny three-fingered red talon lashed out and tripped the gnome. Wick stumbled and fell, face-planting onto the hard-packed dirt of the cavern floor. The imp's laughter followed.
Fall on face, go boom,
Zeg grumbled, and then spat on Wick. The gnome stumbled to his feet and kicked the cage. A yelp of anger piped up from inside the cage, and Wick flipped the small demon off before stumbling towards a dilapidated old rope ladder that clung to the wall of the cavern. Gryph watched with apprehension as his small, drunk friend climbed the ladder. After several anxious moments and a few close calls, the gnome made it to a small alcove carved into the rock of the cavern wall. There he plopped down and pulled a ragged set of old blankets over him. He'll sleep it off, Gryph said. I think I'll do the same. Gryph hoisted his gourd to Dirge, drained the last bit of rancid liquid, and walked off with a stumble. The cold eyes of Dirge followed him every step, and then an even colder grin crossed the wiry Egyptian's face.